Welcome, everybody, to RICO 12. I'm Justin B., your host and a child of an all-powerful and perfectly loving God and an addict living in the miracle of recovery one day at a time. RICO 12 is an open to all addictions and afflictions organization dedicated to exploring the common threads of the differing manifestations of alcoholism, sharing tools, and offering hope from those walking a similar path. We gather from diverse backgrounds, faiths, and locations to learn and support one another. Our speakers come from various fellowships and experiences demonstrating the universal principles of recovery. RICO 12 is not allied or affiliated with any specific 12-step fellowship. In today's meeting, RICO 12 speaker meeting number 376, I'm excited to welcome Robert P., the recovery guy. He's one of my good friends and mentors in recovery over the last several years and has really opened my eyes to a lot of things. He's done several of these speaker meetings that we're doing here. And he's also been my partner in the RICO 12 Ask It Basket that we did, I think, 12 episodes together over the last year and a half or so. And if you want to listen to any of his stuff, just go look it up on the podcast and look up Robert P., the recovery guy. He's, like I said, a great friend and a great mentor. Today, he will be speaking to us, and we'll be having a conversation on the topic of why we must surrender to win. And I look forward to hearing more about that and having that conversation in a few minutes. But first, a few quick announcements. RICO 12 offers a variety of recovery resources, including podcasts and social media communities. To explore more, visit RICO12.com. That's RECO12.com, or check out the chat and show notes for links. We've also recently launched a new podcast called RICO 12 Workshops. What that is, it's a platform where former and current RICO 12 speakers who have recorded workshops or other talks in other meetings, if they choose to, they can share those recordings with me, and I can put them up in our podcast called RICO 12 Workshops. And that link is in the chat and show notes here also, or you can just go to the podcast platform of your choice and look up RICO 12 Workshops, and you'll find it there. We are self-supporting, and your contributions help us continue this message. Thank you to all our Spearhead donors, past and present. If you out there in the listening audience feel your higher power nudging you to make a contribution to RICO 12, the information on how to do that will be in the chat and the show notes, or you can go to the website at RICO12.com/support and make a one-time or a monthly donation. Your support, both financially and by word of mouth, truly makes a difference in helping us share this message of hope and recovery. Now it's time to introduce our guest, but I'm just grateful to have him share his experience, strength, and hope that brings hope, meaning, worth, and growth to each of us. This is Robert P., and here's just a little bit about him. Robert first came into recovery on February 9th, 1986, and met a group of people who would change his life. After a short relapse, Robert came back to recovery on April 25th, 1986, and has been clean and sober ever since. Robert's mission is to become more well and to encourage others along the way. Robert is also the host of the Recovery Guy podcast, and he does all sorts of stuff in the recovery world. And he was also, like I mentioned earlier, a panelist on the 12-part RICO 12 series called Ask It Basket. So, Robert, take it away. The floor is yours.
Hey. I'm so excited that we had communicated last week, just checking up with you as we normally do with each other in the course of our travels and helping others as we, and I love, I'm going to back up a little bit. I love how you pray to the all-powerful God. I mean, what good would it be if we prayed to an average God? We'd get an average life. But we're locked into the all-powerful God who can do all things at all times to everyone, to all people. And that's the God that you and I serve. And boy, I was thinking about that today and about how you and I are friends because we both serve an all-powerful God who can do anything to anyone. We just have to ask. And that's exciting to me. Today, check this out. This is what's really cool about how long I've been sober. Today is 39 years, 5 months, and 1 day. Is today the 26th, because I got sober April 25th, 1986. So today is the 1 day beyond anything, beyond a year, beyond a month. And And really, that's what we celebrate, Justin, as you well know, as a person of recovery, and those of you in the listening audience, every day, because it says in the big book, for we are not cured of alcoholism. What we really have is a daily reprieve contingent on the maintenance of our spiritual condition. Every day is a day we must take God's vision for us into all our activities. And that's one of the reasons that you and I and others like us are sober, are recovered, are well, are on this recovery journey, because the all-powerful God, we look to his vision every day. And, Justin, I'm so glad that RICO 12 encompasses all addictions, because by the time I got to the rooms of recovery back in 1986, I was addicted, obviously, to alcohol, drugs, gambling, compulsive gambling. I never met a girl in a strip club that I didn't want to marry, right? I was a compulsive overeater. I'd become bulimic. So many different aspects of my dis-ease, my uncomfortability had manifested itself beyond the alcoholism into drug addiction and all these other behavioral challenges. And Justin, I'm going to spend a few minutes just qualifying, and then I want you and I to have a conversation, which we're really good at, and then of course entertain questions from any of the listeners today. But I started drinking when I was 14 years old, and it wasn't it was the answer to all of the anxiety that I had been feeling. When I went back and did a 4-step and I took a fearless and moral inventory of myself, I went back as far as I can remember. And Justin, from the time I was 5, by the time I was 6 years old, I would lay in bed at night and cry and wonder why it hurt so much being me. And this was long before I discovered alcohol, as Father Martin would say, would make me an almost, would quiet the madness, would put to sleep that which made me feel uncomfortable. I ended up wetting the bed till I was 11 years old because of high anxiety. And by the time I discovered alcohol, it wasn't my problem. It was the answer to my problems. And that is one thing that I've learned along the journey. So F. Scott Fitzgerald said, first a man takes a drink, then the drink takes a drink, then the drink takes the man. And I was 14 years old when I took my first drink. By the time I was 18 years old, Justin, you've heard this before, the drink started making decisions for me, because it was the only degree of comfortability that I could find. It was the only space I could find. But over a period of time, that wouldn't be enough. Alcohol would not be enough. I had to incorporate drugs, sexual immorality. I was an adulterer. I never met a paycheck I didn't want to lose. I never met a buffet I didn't want to overeat at. And I never wanted to run out of money, because I never wanted to run out of cash to put in the G-string of a stripper that I had gone to see. And that's to where life had taken me. And I was only 26 years old. So first a man took the drink at 14, the drink took the drink at 18, and by 26 years old, Justin, I was removed from the equation of whether or not I was going to drink at all. It just mattered what time I was going to drink, what I was going to drink, and how much I was going to drink. And that just depended upon my day and who I had to be around and how chameleon I had to be to get what I wanted from you. And I'm so fortunate that I didn't die in that area, because, we risk so much. We risk our life. We risk the lives of others. I don't know if I ever had a sober moment behind the wheel of a car, and yet I only got one DUI. And oftentimes, Justin, I talk about, because I've gone into prisons and institutions, and I've met men who woke up in a jail cell and they found out that they had killed a family and they don't even remember driving. Picture that for a moment. You wake up first thing in the morning, or you come to, and you ask it, and you find out you're in jail, and you ask the jailer what I did, and he said 5 charges of manslaughter, because you were driving drunk at 3 o'clock in the morning and you killed the family. And Justin, I never had to experience that. And the more I'm sober, the more I realize what God spared me from. I'm learning about God's mercy as well as God's grace. Grace is something that God gives you. Mercy is something that God kept me from. And that's the way I live my life. So I'm excited about recovery. I share every opportunity I can on this podcast today. I'm doing a podcast with our good friend Drew. I do my own podcast. I just got back from speaking. I attend meetings on a regular basis here locally in Florida, and I do whatever I can to encourage others to get well because I know that for whatever reason, God allowed me the privilege of getting sober one day at a time. And by God's mercy and grace, that will last throughout my lifetime. I'm 71 years old. And if I don't get hit by a bus, I'm going to die of old age. And I'm going to die sharing the message of recovery, of hope, because you and I, as we well know, as men of recovery who have recovered from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body, um, we stay recovered by sharing the message. And the more I share, the more recovered I become. As we know as Christians, that if we're not willing to be third, we'll never be first. And, my ego never went away. I still want to be first, but I have to be willing to be third, which means I have to take the steps. I have to surrender, which will be what you and I will discuss today. And then I have to be willing to submit to that all powerful God along the way, and then become willing to share the message. And it's never about me. I tell people all the time, if you want to feel better about you, go help someone else feel better about themselves. And I hope that gives our audience a background of where I came from and what happened and what it's like today.
Yeah, thank you so much, Robert. And before we get into the core of the surrender conversation, I do want to ask a question that you said. I'm fortunate I didn't die before recovery, before surrender. I'm going to bring surrender in here. Before you surrendered to, and allowed yourself to become third. Um, Talk to me a little bit about the blessing of survival of that period of time, some of the things you've done in your life that have been of value to others, of value to your God, and of value to your family.
You know, everything started with me admitting and that surrendering that, yes, even without permission, as Dr. Paul would say, yes, I am an alcoholic of sorts. I had to admit I was powerless over alcohol. I had to concede to my innermost self that I was a very sick person. And I started listening to others, and I started to identify with who they were, but I wanted to be who they were. I wanted to be that person who had the job, who would actually show up on a Monday, not a Wednesday, who actually showed up with milk that evening instead of 3 days later wondering why they were even out in the first place. And all the things that we become on our road to becoming more sick. And I found, you know, I was 6 months sober after my relapse. I never made it that long, 71 days, and then I relapsed. I was 6 months sober, and and I went to my sponsor, Jack, who was my sponsor for 32 years before he passed away of cancer. God bless him. And I went to Jack and I said, Jack, something's wrong. And I didn't know what it was, Justin, because I was going to meetings, I was reading my big book, I was doing all the ABCs of what it takes for you and me to get well and recover. And yet there was something missing. I couldn't quite put my finger on it, but I knew that if I didn't solve that, if I didn't overcome that, I was going to go back out, and the likelihood is I would never come back, because most of us don't come back. Most of us, we're in such deep denial over being there in the first place that when we fall, our pride, the Bible says a haughty spirit goes before fall and pride goes before destruction. Even Bill in the 12 and 12 would say, it's not surprising that pride heads the list when it talks about the seven deadly sins. And so I went to my sponsor, Jack, and I said, Jack, what is it about me? What am I lacking in my sober and my recovered life that I can add that will make it impossible, if not unlikely, that I would ever go out? And he said, Bob, he said, service. One thing you're lacking, you're serving in the rooms, you're making coffee, you're cleaning ashtrays, you're straightening chairs, but you've never really gone out and served the recovery community. Tonight, we're going to go on a 12-step call. And I was in Las Vegas at the time. That's where I got clean and sober. And Las Vegas is like the relapse capital of the world. People go with 10, 15, 20, 25 years, and they get caught up in the excitement and the atmosphere and the bright lights of Vegas, and they fall. I have an opinion on that. Of course I do. But Jack said to me, we're going to go out, we're going to go tonight. We're going to go on a 12-step call, and we're going to find out what it's like to really serve someone. And Justin, serving for me was going into a person who had relapsed after 20 years of sobriety in a room that reeked of alcohol, like a bar that hadn't been cleaned in days, just stank of old alcohol, and bottles were strewn across the room. And that was my 12-step call. We ended up taking this person to detox because we couldn't help him, but we were there for them. And I realized then and there, and something came over me. I had what Bill would call a spiritual awakening and serving others. And Justin, for the last almost 39 years, that has been my goal. I have found that the more I help others, the more well and the more sober I become.
Got questions about addiction, recovery, or just life in general? Let's noodle it out together. Grab your big book, a pen, a highlighter, and a notepad, and join Nikki M and me, Justin B, on Rico 12 Noodle It Out with Nikki M. Each episode, we take real-life questions, ours, yours, and those from the recovery community, and dig deep into the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous to find real, practical solutions. So, if you're ready to do the work and apply the solution, tune in to Noodle It Out with Nikki M, streaming now on your favorite podcast platform. And I think that's such a vital part of working recovery. I mean, I think the recipe is absolutely incomplete. It's like you've put together the cake batter, but you haven't put it in the oven.
Yeah.
So, and who wants? Well, some people want runny cake batter, but not me.
No, that's a great analogy. Joe and Charlie on Everything A talk about that. They talk about you have no reasonable expectation if you use 3 eggs instead of 5. If you cook it at 350 instead of 410. If you add 1 cup of flour instead of 2, all those ingredients that go into a successful cake, it may look like a cake, but it's not going to taste like a cake. It's certainly not going to taste like the cake that you asked the recipe for.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so let's jump into the surrender thing. And, a big book purist may say, hey, the word surrender does not appear in the first 164 pages or in the Roman numerals before those 164 pages. The word abandon appears there. But talk to us about why this topic of why we must surrender in order to win.
Justin, universally, with every monotheistic religion of the world, every 12-step program, I had an evangelist friend who taught me how to door knock and how to ingratiate people at their front door, preaching the gospel. I'm a Christian. I make no apologies for my relationship with Christ. The great thing about the all-powerful God that you and I serve, as it says in the big book, spiritual experience and spiritual awakening, it can come across us in many different ways, and it's sufficient to bring about recovery. So if your higher power is the tide, if your higher power is the sunset, if your higher power is the sunrise, if your higher power is the group, and you're happy, you're joyous, and you're free, I got no issues with you. I'm not going to try to talk you out of my God and talk you out of your God and talk you into mine. We'll only have that conversation if you're having a problem relapsing, if you're not really happy, joyous, and free, if you've been sober for a while and you haven't rebuilt your life yet, then we might talk about a higher power. But even in the beginning, Justin, whether it's sex, whether it's food, whether it's bulimia, gambling, alcohol, drugs, we have to surrender that we are powerless. And when I say I'm powerless, if I haven't surrendered, I'm holding out a bit of power for me that says, well, if this doesn't work, I can always rely on my own sources. Powerlessness is laying down the weapons. I surrender. I surrender. And surrender is not a subjective thing. It's very objective. Either we surrendered, either we dropped our weapons. If we either we've given up all defense, or we haven't. If we haven't, we're holding on, and we haven't quite surrendered completely. And I think that's the problem with people who, it certainly was the problem in my life, and the problem in people's lives that I've seen come and go. Most of them go rather than come. Because they haven't surrendered. And when we look at the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, which are the same steps of SAEA, OAGA, you name it, surrender, you must surrender. It uses the word, the closest word that comes to it, it says, abandon yourself to God as you understood him. Praying only for the knowledge of his will for us and the power to carry that out. In step 11, we sought through prayer and meditation to improve. So I'm giving up. If I'm seeking to improve, I'm saying I don't know. And Winston Churchill said, everyone wants to learn, but no one wants to be taught. I need to stay teachable, which means I need to stay on my knees on a regular basis. And I know when I'm not on my knees, Justin. I know when I haven't surrendered, because all of a sudden the person in front of me at the stoplight is hanging out a little bit too long. The person in front of me at Walmart is not moving quite as fast, and all those things, because I haven't surrendered to the universe the way God requires me. And surrender is a funny thing. Surrender not only takes from me what needs to be taken, but allows me to see things that are right in front of me.
Yeah, I really like the analogy you talked about with surrender. I got to lay down my weapons of war. I got to lay down those weapons. So often I hear this, especially from newcomers and sometimes from people who have been around in the rooms for a little while. I just need to fight and win. I need to beat this thing back. I need to be able to beat this thing back. Um, how do you explain to the newcomer, it's not about beating it back, it's about surrender, without chasing them off and making them feel like it's absolutely nothing's gonna work?
You know, I, you bring up a very good point, and that's the second half of step one. I've admitted I was powerless. For me, it was primarily alcohol. When I stopped drinking, all the other things in time went away as I would practice the principles in all my affairs. But I had to look at, I'm powerless over alcohol. I was powerless over my sex addiction. I was just powerless. That my life had become unmanageable. I just had to look at the unmanageability of my life to get an idea of how much I needed to surrender. Because I tried partially surrendering, going back to the fact that you recognize God as the all-powerful God. I remember surrendering to my wife so she wouldn't change the locks, or to my boss that they wouldn't fire me, or to the judge that they would allow me to have 30 days probation instead of 30 days in jail, or 6 months probation instead of 30 days in jail. I used to surrender to people, places, and things, but it really wasn't surrender. It was just laying down my arms until the pressure went off. That's not surrender. And I talk to a newcomer and I say, give me an example of the things that you've done under the influence that you would want to share with the rest of the world. And do you think that your behavior is the cause of the problems? I had a friend of mine tell me, he said, not every time I got drunk did I get in trouble, but every time I was in trouble, I was drunk. And that lended itself to me as a degree of unmanageability. If I believe my life is still manageable, I believe I don't need to surrender.
Hey, Spearheads. If you're looking to dive deeper into the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous with people who live the solution, then you won't want to miss Rico 12 Big Book Roundtable. Join David G., Nikki M., and me, the moderator Justin B., 3 recovered addicts from multiple fellowships, as we break down the big book line by line. In each 30-minute episode, we share our experience, strength, and hope in a real, raw, and practical roundtable discussion. So, if you are ready to learn and apply what you learn, tune in to Rico 12 Big Book Roundtable on your favorite podcast platform. Yeah, maybe this is semantics here, but I talked about, I just got to beat this thing. I got to this is the word I want to use now. I've heard people say, I overcame my addiction to whatever it may be, whether it be sex, whether it be pornography, whether it be food, whether it be alcohol or drugs. I overcame that. Talk to us about the damage that, or maybe the misunderstanding that is in relationship to the concept of surrendering.
We can overcome without surrendering, but that's short-lived, in my opinion. I believe that we have to overcome the urges to go out. We have to go out to anywhere, no matter what makes you feel good. We have to overcome that urge that says to go out. And that happens almost in a vacuum. But over time, that's not enough. That we have to stay surrendered and stay in a position of surrender. Otherwise, I'm going to take whatever degree of power or sense of power that I had, I'm going to take that back because I think I know better than God. Again, going back, you preface your relationship with God as being all powerful. Either God has all power or he doesn't. Either God has limited power or he has temporary power or he has all power. All power for all the time means that I have to say, I know when I'm not surrendering to God. Everything bothers me, whether I'm hungry, angry, lonely, or tired. Everything bothers me. Everything is a big deal. And when I surrender and let God do for me what I can't do for myself, everything seems to be aligned. And so I know with how I'm feeling. Today I had a very busy morning and I just had to relax. I had to wait an hour and 15 minutes to get my oil changed. And I didn't want to surrender to the people who were in front of me. I wanted them to move faster according to my time frame. But Justin, when I slow down, and this is what I do during the day, when I find myself being anxious, when I find myself not paying attention to the things that I could be paying attention to, how to be a better person, and I surrender to God, things just go better for me. In the beginning, though, it's rather difficult, as you would know, because all of us have been a newcomer at one time or another. Anyone with any semblance of sobriety, 6 months, 9 months, a year, and beyond. It's easier to stay sober than it is to get sober. It is easier to stay surrendered than it is surrender because we're very tangible people. If we can't taste it, feel it, touch it, smell it, we don't believe it. And we're asked to believe in this invisible higher power, even though, let's say the higher power is your group. You can see them, but you can't see the power that resides in them to give them the results that you want. You just have to know that it's operating on another level, on another dimension. That's why Bill talks about we're catapulted into another dimension. And that's the dimension of the unknowable. The Bible says, again, I make no apologies for the word of God. The Bible says that God is a spirit. Those who worship him must worship him in spirit and in truth. I can't see him the way I can see you right now. I can't see him the way I see my sponsees, but I know he's more real. And just give it time. Surrender yourself to God as you understood him. And that understanding for a newcomer is quite different than you or me down the road, because God has demonstrated over and over and over again in our marriage, in the life of our children, in our job life, and all the dynamics that we want to be working. God has continually demonstrated himself, proved himself or herself, or whoever your God is itself, has continually proved that he is the all-powerful God in charge of your life. So sometimes time, we surrender to time, because time can be our best friend or it can be our worst enemy. But we'll either go out or we will surrender. We won't do both simultaneously because they can't coexist.
Yeah, and that's something that, excuse me, that's something that I think um, I and many others want to think they can make coexist, surrender and doing my will, doing the things that I want to do. And it just doesn't work out. I want to talk to you about, let's do a situational thing. Let's say that I'm working my recovery, I'm serving, I'm going out on 12-step visit, I'm doing all of the things, checking all the boxes, I'm connecting with God, I'm doing all these things. And my life seems to be falling apart in lots of different places. How do I surrender in those situations and trust that my higher power, whatever that higher power may be, has me, and that I can trust that that will work out for whatever those purposes are in the end?
You know, that is why you and I still have sponsors. Even after 39 years, I have a sponsor who's been sober 45 years. And I have my wife, and you have your wife, and they're great sounding boards. And a lot of times others can see things that we're not willing to see because they harm us, or we're asked to change. Sometimes, especially in the beginning, there's a price that we have to pay for our actions. Maybe we're going through a divorce. Maybe we're going through some financial times because we're gambling. Maybe we need to reestablish, maybe our car gets repossessed because we have such a bad relationship with the finance company. Maybe we found out that our license was suspended as we were pulled over driving. We didn't even know it. But our past caught up with our present. And that's the biggest challenge in the beginning, is our past get caught up with our present, and it causes us to pay consequences. You and I can't live as we lived without consequences. Some of us escape the consequences of waking up in jail, never killing the Jones family of five. Some of us, like me, I experienced two divorces. I've been married to Laura for over 36 years now, but there was a time that Justin, I was so drunk and so high that I experienced the consequence of the separation and the divorce of my second wife while I was still drunk and while I was getting sober. I got served with divorce papers when I was getting sober, and I thought, how could this happen to me? And I thought, you're lucky only this did happen to you. You're lucky the judge didn't throw the hammer down on you, because he could have. Um, the finance company could have come back and said you owe us $15,000 instead of writing it off. So and again, that's the thing between mercy and grace. But sometimes we have to experience the errors of our ways, because the unmanageability of our life dictates oftentimes what's going to happen when we get clean, when we get sober, when we start living a good life. Just because I'm not drinking, using, acting out anymore 6 months down the road doesn't mean that everything I was doing didn't have consequences. Sometimes there are consequences to my behavior, and I have to learn how to deal with them. And again, that is if that is happening to a person who is somewhere down the line of their recovery, a year or 2 years, where things we should have given things enough time to run their own course. That's when we need to talk to our significant other, or talk to our sponsor and say, this is what's happening to me. Just like Jack. I went to Jack and said, something's wrong somewhere. If I don't fix this, look at me and tell me what you think I'm not doing, because I'm not getting the results that I'm looking to get. And sometimes we just need to go face that judge. Sometimes we need to go face those creditors. Sometimes people refuse to have a relationship with us. And this is the biggest area because we haven't made a proper amends. Well, if we're on step 3 or step 4, we've made amends by not acting out or using, but we haven't gotten to that amends where I come to you and I say, Justin, I know I wronged you in so many ways. I know I owe you money. I know I treated you badly. Please forgive me. And I promise to pay back that money. I can only do it, $20 a week, $100 a month, that sort of thing. And then over time, I sincerely ask to make amends, and you grant me such. Sometimes you say to me, Robert, forget about it. We're fine, but I don't want you a part of my life anymore. I have to be willing to move on from those things because I can't undo my past. I can only make my present better. Sometimes, though, making our present better helps to alleviate our past, but it doesn't undo it. I will never not have walked out on my daughters. I will never not be the adulterer I was to my first 2 wives. I will never not have been fired for showing up on Wednesday when I was supposed to report on Monday to my jobs. So I can't go on back and undo those things, but I can be a better person moving forward. And that's what we need to concentrate on. How am I doing today to help? My sponsor, Will, says, if we clear in step 10, it says continue to take a personal inventory. And when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. I'm surrendering at that point. When I'm wrong, not if I'm wrong, but when I'm wrong, I'm surrendering to the fact that I'm a human being. My sponsor, Will, said, if we clear away the records of our present, it doesn't become the records of our past. So I'm clearing things up as I go instead of compiling things in the closet where I'm fortunate to shut the door on.
So Robert, before I ask you this next question, I want to remind our live audience here, if you have a question for Robert or for me, please post them in the chat. If you'd like to remain anonymous and not have me read your first name, just make a note of that when you post that question in the chat. We'll get to those. But I want to jump to this next question I have for you that I think builds on what you just said. There's a line from the full version or the long version of the Serenity Prayer that says, trusting that you, God, will make all things right if I surrender to your will. When the past catches up to the present, how can I trust that all of that mess will be made right if I continue to surrender to the will of my higher power?
We just have to trust the process. Sometimes, though, Justin, as you know, the ship is never righted. I have a couple relationships in my life with family members, and I've harmed them. It doesn't mean they haven't forgiven me. It's just that they've set boundaries to make sure they never will be hurt again by me. And I'm 39 years sober. And they said, you know what? God bless you, but I don't want to have anything to do with you anymore. You've hurt me in a way that my forgiveness does not extend to forgetting. And they've kept me at arm's length. And I have to be okay with that. It hurts when I think about it, but it doesn't hurt more than my new life makes me feel good, because now I've done everything I possibly can to warrant their forgiveness, but I can't take away the pain that I've caused them. And they have every right. They're not bitter. They're living wonderful lives. We're done. I'm done with you. God bless you. I'm glad you're sober. I'm glad you're clean. I'm glad you got a great marriage. But as far as you and I are concerned, I'll see you at your funeral. You'll see me at mine, and that has to be okay. If it's not okay, I haven't surrendered. If it's not okay, that means I think I can be someone or do something to change their mind. I have to surrender to God and say, God, if anyone can change their heart, it's you. And I want you to change them because then I know they'll be fully changed if you speak to them rather than me, because it'll be the same old thing, you know. And one of the people I'm in regular communication with, we chat about a couple times a week, and one of the people I haven't talked to directly in 15 years, and they're a family member. You know, I don't hold anything against them. They don't hold anything against me. We just don't hold anything together at all. And that's just the way. And although I wish it were different, that's perfectly okay.
Hey, Rico 12 Spearheads. If our recovery resources have helped you, please consider a donation. Your financial support, as well as your word of mouth support, keeps Rico 12 running and reaching the man who is still sick. Donate today at rico12.com/support, or check the show notes for PayPal and Venmo links. Every contribution helps carry the message. Thanks for being a Rico 12 Spearhead. Yeah, I've got some situations like that in my life too. Now, I want to go back a little bit to the analogy that was drawn there of laying down our weapons of war here in this process of surrender. Um, I know that, and I don't know if this is your case, Robert, but I know that in my case, as I've gone along and walked this path of trudged this road of happy destiny and recovery, every once in a while, I'll, I'll scratch my leg or something and recognize, oh, I still have a throwing knife in my sock. I'll discover a weapon of war there, and I won't want to lay it down. Hey, I got to hold on to this because for whatever reason, have you ever had situations like that? And if so, how do you lay down that throwing knife?
Man.
Or that? Yeah.
I had a spiritual advisor, and I love this guy and I hated him at the same time. He said every time, and it goes to a weapon, every time you defend yourself, it's pride. And I said, the heck it is. And he said, see, this is what I'm talking about. So I, I want to shake some people sometimes. Can't you see it's me? Can't you see? And if you don't go along with me, I'm going to harm you. That hasn't been the case in a long time. I have not wished harm upon anyone in some time. Sometimes when I wish harm upon somebody in the beginning, it was only because out of fear of rejection. So, if you reject me, you do. I'm there. I'm the best possible person I can be today. I have enough accountability in my life, but I remember when that was very true. I found that made me very unhappy. And Justin, by the time I got to the rooms of recovery, if it wasn't for honesty, I would have never relapsed. And that was the weapon in my boot. I just couldn't be honest. Father Martin talks about the only thing worse than a lie is a half truth. Think about that for a moment. The only thing worse than a lie is a half truth. And I think my weapon in my boot, Justin, was a half truth. I wanted to explain away why I was doing something instead of just surrendering to the fact that it was a sick version of me. And when I thought I was a bad person doing bad things, I had that knife in my boot. When I realized I was a sick person who did sick things, see, I have to, I'm going to go for an ablation procedure. To my cardiologist, I found I have, it sounds really cool, but it's not. I have persistent AFib. And you would think persistent, wow, that's a good thing. No, it's not a good thing. My heart is always an AFib. And so I have to undergo this procedure called ablation. And I say to my doctor, okay, you're the professional here. I'm going to lay down all my weapons. What do I have to do to get better? The same thing when I went to my dermatologist and he said, you have melanoma cancer and you need to surrender to me, to my education, to my authority, and you need to let me operate on this thing. If I operate, I can get rid of the cancer and you can live a long life. providing again you don't get hit by a bus. And so I have to surrender, and I find that I'm surrendering to people who know more than me along the way, because they're have an understanding that I want to gain. And sometimes that comes from a person. I've got this friend, Jason T. And matter of fact, Jason wants to be on your show again, so he's going to be reaching out to you. And Billy, who I just referred over to you. These are men. Jason's been sober 12 years. Billy's been sober 41. And these are men who I look to in my life, but especially Jason. I had a situation that came up last week that I really wanted to make sure that I was processing properly, because I want this person to get well more than I want to be correct or right. Although I want to be right, my ego demands that I'm right. But more importantly, I want this person to be well. And so I went to Jason. I said, "What do you think? Am I processing this correctly in advising this person in the way that I think that I need to advise them to get the best possible result?" And sometimes we get our information from different sources. And obviously I forgot the question and I'm just rambling, but you know what I'm talking about. Surrender and advice. And I know when I'm surrendering because I feel good about where I'm at. I felt good about knowing I was going to get back in time to speak with you. I have a lot more things to do today, but in this window of time, I've surrendered to the time. Everything else is not necessary. The only thing I'm focusing on right here, right now, is the listening audience. And sometimes the only thing I'm talking about, relying on is the moment. And that's all we have is the moment.
Mm. Thank you, Robert. And whether you're rambling or not, your rambling is full of wisdom, and I'm grateful for that, because it's good stuff.
You know what, Justin? You brought up something very interesting. Let me ramble again. You brought up the long version of the Serenity Prayer, and when we say, "God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference." Sometimes God just gives us wisdom. And the Bible says that wisdom is the principal thing. Therefore, get wisdom. And with all thy getting, get understanding. That understanding is how I take the word of wisdom, the word of truth, and apply it to my life. God allows me that free agency. My God isn't a God that stands over me. Neither is yours. I know who your God is. And he doesn't stand over you with a giant stick saying, "Justin, you're leaning far to the left, you're leaning to the right." He allows you that degree of humanity to live out your life so you can relate to others, so they can relate to you. If all they see in us is some godly figure, then we haven't scratched the surface, because they need to see themselves as relatable in their pain, in their suffering, in their loss, in order to see us as people of recovery.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for sharing these things. And I'm grateful that you're sharing light that you have. There's a passage in the big book. It's in the last couple of paragraphs of the first 164, talks about, obviously you cannot share that which you do not have. You can't transmit that. So we got to see that our relationship is right, and a right relationship. Tell me how we get our relationship right with God so that we can share, so we can have something to share.
That's where the steps come in, Justin. I am a big book thumper. You know that. And I make no apologies. Matter of fact, the night that we met was when I was at the treatment center, and I admonished the treatment center. I call a spade a spade. I call it out. I say the treatment centers are the problems, because they're going to create and propagate a myth that you surrender to the treatment center, you don't surrender to God. And along the way, we just need to surrender to every step, because alcohol, drugs, sex, pornography, gambling, that's not the problem. That is not the problem. The problem is that is the answer to our problem. The problem is you or I or others like us, we don't know how to live. And so the 12 steps of recovery are how we find a way of living. So we take step one, we admit we're powerless over alcohol or whatever makes our feel good, that our life had become unmanageable. Then in step two, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves, we have to admit that we are insane. Where it says um, at the end of, I think it's page 62, A, we were alcoholic and could not manage our own lives. B, that probably no human power could have relieved our alcoholism. And C, that God could and would if he were sought. It says after that next line, that next paragraph, it says, being convinced. We are now at step three. I need to be convinced of my powerlessness. I need to be convinced that a person like me, in order to win, I have to surrender. And I have to admit that I'm insane. As my friend John Nordstrom would say, and I chased a rabbit before I got to this point, John said we have to get them lost before we can get them saved. You as a person of faith and working with returning missionaries and all that you do, their whole mission in life is to find a lost people who need salvation. And if I don't think I'm lost, why do I think I need to be saved? If I don't think I'm in despair, why do I think I need hope? If I'm not sick, why do I think I need to be well? So I come to step two, and I came to believe that a power greater than myself could, not does, not would, could. And that could is only contingent on I'm the common denominator. I must surrender for that could to occur. And then in step three, I became willing to turn my will and my life over to the care of God. As I understand it, my understanding is very small. Remember, we're very tangible people. If we can't see it, smell it, taste it, touch it, experience it, it's not real to us. And so I have to be willing. A lot of times, Justin, and I know we're running out of time here, and I'll end with this as far as this segment goes. I have to be willing. It doesn't mean I have a higher power yet. I have to be willing to believe that I need to turn my will and my life over to something, because me running my life has been a train wreck. You can look at every relinquished opportunity, every experience, every relationship, and attribute it directly to my alcoholism, my drug addiction, my thinking that someone outside of me was going to make the inside of me better. And that's the importance of surrender. And again, I believe that if we don't surrender, we don't get well.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Robert. And as we bring this train back into the station here, as we close this up, and it appears that we haven't wrecked it yet, which is awesome. Do you have any final words of wisdom for us to bring it into the station before we close out?
No, I just really appreciate you and your ministry and all you do for the recovery community and all the different aspects and mindsets that you bring to this station, to this podcast. And I'm so glad that you're continuing to recover and heal your marriage just as me. We're healing every single day, just like you, Justin, and many people in the audience. I never want to wake up and think I'm done. I want to think, man, if I felt this good over yesterday, what if I really applied myself? What if I really surrendered to God as I understand God? What could I be then? And it's off the chart. My future is unlimited because you and we serve the all-powerful God. And he's like the big daddy who owns everything, and he would hold back nothing if we didn't hold back something.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Robert. Great speaker meeting, great conversation as always. I'm grateful for you to be here. Love catching up with you, brother. If anybody out there has a question for Robert, please consider joining our WhatsApp community, posting it there. We'll get that in there. If you'd like to get in contact with Robert, you can email me. I'll make sure you get in contact with him, connect you with him. He has some great resources and great wisdom to share. If you haven't yet considered rating and reviewing Rico 12 or any of the different podcasts and things that we do out there, please go to Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Rate and review it. It's a powerful way to work step 12 and share recovery with others. Next Friday, we'll be back here with Matt D., who has spoken with us a few times before, and I'm excited to hear from him. And I have been able to get a handful of speakers over the next little bit, but there's still a few openings over the next few months. So if your higher power is putting a topic on your heart, please reach out to me and we'll get that thing scheduled. Stay updated via WhatsApp and our email list. And you can get on that list by sending me an email at rico12pod@gmail.com. All right, Robert, please take us out of here with a prayer of your choosing.
Father, we just thank you for today. I thank you for the ministry that you've given to Justin and to me and to others like us who have decided it is better to be on your side than it is to be halfway across the line. Things just go better when we surrender. And I want to continually surrender, just as Justin and many of the others listening to us today who will hear this, who have heard this. And God, we just know that our sight, our vision is very limited, where you can see everything at all times. And that is who we want to surrender to. So we do everything in your name and according to your grace and your mercy. In God's name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you so much, Robert. Remember, everybody, there is one who has all power. That one is God. May you find God now. Keep coming back, and when you do, come all the way in, sit all the way down. Let's trudge this road of happy destiny together. Work it. You are worth it.
I've seen stars fall from above. I've fallen in and out of love. I've been high and I've been low. Now I know I just can't do this on my own. I've seen a boy become a man. He got lost without a plan. He's so far away from home. Now I know I just can't do this on my own. Your arms surrounding me. Your touch is grounding me. No longer searching for purpose all alone. 'Cause now I know that I just can't do this on my own. I'm looking for the words to say. You make the world a better place, and I can call that place my home. 'Cause now I know that I just can't do this on my own. Your arms surrounding me. Your touch is grounding me. No longer searching for purpose all alone. 'Cause now I know that I just can't do this on my own. So let me see just what you need to set you free, so we can be. I saw stars fall from above. I fell in and out of love. I got high and I fell low. But now I know that I just can't do this on my own. No, I just can't do this on my own. I just can't do this on my own.